Chapter 2, The Ninth. Summary: The Vestiges' reaction to the shift and the ensuing chaos. Nana had no idea what had just happened to them. One second they were talking about everything that had happened in the fight and how they could do better next time, and the next they were in a completely new location, if you could even call it that. "Why the hell are our chairs now plush?" Anne asked, standing up and moving his chair back. "Is that a—" Daigoro pointed at the corner, a large pile of plush animals. "An All Might thing?" Nana sighed, standing up and moving over to the pile. She dug out the large plush, a round figure of their 8th user. "Yeah," she confirmed before tossing the plush to him. "Yes, it is." Yoichi stood up slowly, getting the attention of the entirety of them. "What's up, old man?" Anne asked before Nana chucked a plush at his head. "Our connection is gone," Yoichi spoke. Kudo caught him as he stepped forward, though he didn't stumble. Nana moved back to her seat, catching the plush and threw at her. "What do you mean first?" Bruce asked, moving to his other side. Yoichi waved him off, and he hesitated nearby. "You guys can't feel the same connection to this quirk and plane that I can," Yoichi said, raising a hand to the edge of their platform. Nana sighed, leaning into her hand as she watched Yoichi work. He had been here for each of them, crafting and changing this plane. Quirks really were bullshit if he got all that and all she had was her float. Before her younger successor passed his quirk on, of course. The world outside their platform shifted and changed from the simply continuous gray to the vivid world outside. "Aren't we supposed to be in the hospital?" Daigoro asked, standing up. "Why is that a child's bedroom?" Nana stood up, trying to get a better look at the view in front of them, all around them. They could see fully around Toshi, but it was wrong. Toshi wasn't this short, and this definitely was not an area he should be. The posters of him all over the wall and the cartoon bedsheet and pillows, not to mention the exact same plushies that were currently sitting behind them in this plane. "First, any ideas?" Kudo asked, readjusting his hold on the sickly man. "This isn't what I'm concerned about," Yoichi said, tilting his hand on the view. Anne held a hand up before leaning back. "If our newest addition is hanging out in some child's room, I think that's an issue." Nana sighed, rubbing her eyes. "Can you not right now?" "What? Mad your successor is going to end up on a registry?" "Shut it, 6, Bruce said suddenly. Anne opened his mouth for a comeback, but Daigoro smacked him upside the head, shutting him up. "What's the issue here first?" he asked, still not sitting down. "The quirks are gone," Yoichi said simply, pulling his hand towards himself. Nana gasped, grabbing at her chest. Everyone in the room felt it, and the only one to explicitly state his response. "What do you mean?" Kudo asked, readjusting quicker than the rest of them. Nana's head pounded, and her stomach churned as she tried to blink out the black spots in her vision. "Damn, I feel like I got my period back." "Gross. Don't talk about that," Hikage said, and she glared at the man. God, she hated being the only woman here. "What part of a period?" "Guys," Kudo shouted, getting their attention. "Can we focus on the missing quirks?" "Can you turn off that god-awful feeling?" Bruce asked. Yoichi nodded, pushing his hand forward. "Thank you." Nana sighed in relief, leaning back to look at what was up. "So, what's up?" "Your successor is no longer the last," Yoichi said, tapping Kudo on the arm. He led him back to his chair at the table, everyone watching him carefully. He sat down slowly, and Kudo returned to his seat beside him. "An aspect of our power has been passed on to another. Not the quirks, however, just us." "How do you know?" Bruce asked. "I cannot turn off that god-awful feeling like you can. I felt the bond break," Yoichi explained. "It was voluntary. 8 has passed it on to the next user. The quirks could not support itself in a child, so it separated. It pulled us from our quirks and left them behind. 8 has—" "Hold the phone, old man," Anne said, holding a hand up. "You mean to tell us that we are legitimately inside of a child right now? Like a random child from the streets is now in control of us." "And we've lost our quirks," Hikage added. "Even though they are ours?" "They aren't," Yoichi corrected him. "They are one for alls now, and I remind you that you all willingly accepted." "I didn't," Daigoro said, raising a hand. "I gave mine very unwillingly." "Shut up," Nana said, cutting them all off. Can we just figure out which child we are in and how to get back to 8? He's your successor, and reminded her, like always, the failed one. She looked over at the shell of her successor, biting her cheek. That's not right. Toshi was flickering, his form shifting and changing as if a strong wind was blowing on it. What do we do? Kudo asked, looking at Yoichi. Yoichi sighed, rubbing at his tired face as he shook his head. I don't know. This is not something I ever considered a successor doing. Nana held a hand up, shutting up N before he said anything. I know. He was a stupid choice, but I trust him. Do we just watch? Find out what child it is? Bruce asked, now that we have to deal with this for the next while. Yoichi nodded, leaning forward. He didn't even move to the edge, the footage playing. Not footage. Live feed from a child. A child who Toshinori just gave his quirk to with no ideas of the repercussions. A child that Nana hoped for everything was not biologically related to her successor. If he shacked up with that pretty fangirl he talked about after Nana had warned him not to, she was going to kill the man. Especially with the green hair and round face that came into view as the bedroom door opened. Izuku, can we talk, baby? Izuku fidgeted, kicking his feet and watching them hit the edge of the chair. His mama had let him bring his favorite All Might plush from his room, and he clutched it tighter. The police officer was watching him from across the room, and he hadn't stopped since he and his mama came in. Izuku, please, his mom said, putting his hand on his leg. Just for a little longer, baby. He nodded, tucking his face into the plush as the next person got up to speak. He didn't know any of these old people who kept getting up to talk, or even any of the stuff they were saying. He didn't even know how long he had been sitting here trying not to kick his legs or say anything. He didn't know how he was supposed to feel about all this. His dad was dead. He should feel sad. He knew he should be sad, but he just kind of felt bad, like he had eaten something he shouldn't have, or someone had told him he was sick. It was just bad. Mama was crying, though, tears running down her cheeks as she watched the old man speak about his father, about how much good he did for everyone. Izuku didn't feel that. Izuku, baby, his mama asked, wiping her cheeks, and he looked over at her. Do you mind if you stay with Katsuki and his family tonight? He bit his lip, tucking his chin further into the plush. No, he didn't want to stay over there. Katsuki was loud since he had gotten his quirk, always yelling and exploding stuff, but his mama looked so sad. Okay, Mama, he said, tucking his legs up. She sighed, kissing the top of his head as she wiped away more tears. I love you, baby. I love you too, Mama, he said, leaning into her. She held him tight, her body shaking silently with every cry. Why didn't he feel like crying? He watched people continue to cycle through, his eyes growing heavier as he yawned. His mama rubbed his shoulder, whispering something to him that he couldn't hear. His mind felt so different, so fogged up the past few days. He didn't know what it was, but it was probably sadness. That's why he wasn't crying. Izuku, she said, shaking his shoulder. He blinked up at her, shaking his head at the weird fog that had come over it. Are you awake, baby? Baby? He looked up at her again, his eyebrows furrowing. Mama? He asked, the words sounding wrong in his throat. Oh, something had gone very, very wrong. He was not where he was supposed to be. Are you ready to go with Katsuki and his family now? She asked, standing up slowly and reaching a hand out for him. Ah, shit. Okay, yes? He asked, taking her hand. Okay, that was way too small a hand, and holy shit, he was short. Yes, he said a little more confidently, hoping it didn't sound too wrong. Oh, First would be so upset right now if he could see this. Wait, he could. When it was his turn to watch after the stupid kid's life they had been doing for the past week. Whose turn was it after N's? He totally had definitely not read the plans that they had set in place. This was not discussed at all. He went along with the woman, Mama. What was her actual name? Because he was not calling this lady Mama. He might be stuck in a child's body with no idea how to escape, but that was too far. Inko, dearie, mind if I take Izuku to the car? A woman with blonde hair asked. Auntie. God, was this kid not an idiot for knowing any real names? But he had one now. Oh, I don't know. I'm not sure this is a good idea. Inko tightened her grip on his hand, and he had to fight to not pull away. Not that he could really free himself, since he had a damn All Might plush in his other hand. Sweetie, you need a night to yourself. I'll bring him back safe and sound tomorrow, the woman said. En bit his lip, looking around the funeral home thing they were in, trying to take everything in. A cop was staring directly at him, holding a phone in front of his face like he wasn't. But En was still a pro-hero, despite the whole being dead thing, and that spelt trouble for him. Let's go, he said quickly, ripping his hand from Inko's and grabbing the blonde woman's. He was not calling her auntie. Oh, Inko said, her hands grabbed at her sides. If she needed a night alone, she needed a night alone. Hell, she'd probably be drunk out of her mind by morning. That was his go-to whenever he attended funerals. I'll see you in the morning, okay, baby? He fought the urge to wince at the nickname as he nodded with a smile and pulled the blonde woman forward. The cop was still staring at his back like some scent hound he couldn't lose the trail of. Izuku, the woman asked, but he kept his eyes forward and tried to not make it obvious he was very much not Izuku, who even knew where the hell the kid went. But of course, it had to be him who dealt with this bullshit. That was all Seven's fault for choosing a crappy successor, which made it his damn fault as well. Zuku, a voice called from behind him as they finally reached the big doors. Zuku! En hesitated just long enough for someone to grab his arm, pulling him back as he lost hold of the woman's hand. You can't steal my mom, a young boy said, crossing his arms on his chest. He had blonde hair, so he assumed it was this lady's kid. Kachan. Shit. Why did he know that? He really, really did not like kids. Yes, he asked, biting his lip as he caught sight of the cop over the boy's shoulder. He was talking to Inko, taking her hands. Ah, crap. He really hoped this kid was not some sort of villain love child who was being hunted. That would be extremely inconvenient for him. Zuku, the boy yelled, clapping his hands together with a loud pop. En shuffled back, his back hitting the wall as he glared at the boy. Katsuki, you know you can't use your quirk in public. Plus, you're scaring Izuku. Scaring him? Please. He had seen far worse than a boy with an explosion quirk on the field. And now he knew the boy's quirk. Lovely. Splendid. Fuck him, huh? He turned around and left, ignoring Inko's sad look that she needed to drink away, and the two blonde annoyances. Izuku, come, we have an extra bed in Katsuki's room all set up, a brown-haired man said, taking En by his shoulders. Ah, fuck. There were 3 of them. He needed to figure out a plan for how to deal with this, how to give the kid his body back so he did not have to be a child again. The first time sucked enough for all of time. Why aren't you crying? The blonde boy asked, running up next to En as he tried to guess which car they were going to. Katsuki, the blonde woman yelled, smacking the kid upside the head. En wished he could do that himself right now. You can't ask him that. Why not? Kachan, God, he hated that name, but he needed some sort of title, asked. His dad died. He should cry. Ah, En said out loud, the pieces coming together. That would explain why this boy's mom was so sad. Drinking would definitely help. The blonde woman crouched in front of him, holding his shoulders. What's up, Izuku? She asked softly. He hesitated, looking around for answers. Shit, the cop had followed them out. I am just really tired. I think sleep would help, En said, watching the cop's reflection in the car. They were so close. The woman laughed a little, raising an eyebrow. Are you sure you're okay, Izuku? You sound weird. Ah, he was coming this way. Time for plan B. En ran. He ran straight for the car that looked the most familiar and tried to rip open the back seat. Izuku, hold on, the man shouted, the doors unlocking on the car. En climbed into the nice-looking car. Holy shit, this was an expensive car. He couldn't even pay for this on a hero's salary. He grabbed the door quickly and tried to slam it shut. The blonde boy grabbed it, ripping it open and jumping up into the seat, shoving him. Trying to leave me? He asked, finally shutting the door. En piled over the man in the driver's seat, locking the car doors before the woman's could even close. Okay then, the woman said, frowning. Tired, En said, nodding as he looked out the window. The cop was gone. The man laughed, nodding slightly. Let's get you back to our place, okay? Katsuki, how about he takes the bed tonight? Whoa, wait. Daigoro stood up from his chair, looking around at his table mates. They were all frozen in their plain states, waiting to be woken up for their shift, like he should have been an hour ago based on the clock Yoichi had put in. He groaned, rubbing his eyes as he looked for his successor. But En wasn't at the table anymore. Not how he should be. That's not good, he muttered, looking at his seat, which was filled with a smoke form. That really wasn't good. He scanned over the rest of them, hesitating at the fact that there were 9 chairs now, which obviously meant something was wrong since there were 8 of them, which also meant... I hate this quirk, Daigoro said, stepping back away from the table to wake Yoichi. Something squeaked in the room, and he paused, searching for the source. "You're awake!" the young boy exclaimed, looking up from his spot on the floor. "That is a child," Daigoro said, nodding. "Okay. Hi, child," he offered, walking over to the fluffy-haired boy, who was fully formed, not in a ghost-like state. The boy giggled, patting the floor beside him. "Want to color with me?" he asked, grinning up at Daigoro. "Hell yeah," he said, moving to sit beside the kid, who had a coloring book and crayons. That wasn't possible. He had tried to get himself his game system, and it had been all funky and weird, but those were actual crayons. "Hold up, kid. How'd you get this stuff?" The boy looked down at the coloring supplies, shrugging. "I wanted it." He returned to coloring a picture of that egotistical All Might humming. "I'm gonna get some help here," he decided out loud, but the kid didn't respond from his mat, from his dinosaur print rug that definitely had not been there 5 minutes ago. He considered himself a fun-loving guy, but that was a child with magic powers. He wasn't that fun-loving. "Hey, first, yo." He shook the sickly man's chair until he finally shifted. He looked up at Daigoro, his usual tired look in his eye. "What is it, Fifth?" "There's a kid," he said, stepping aside. He looked down and jumped back, the kid suddenly directly behind him. "Holy crap." Yoichi blinked in shock, waving at the boy who giggled and ran back to his coloring book, which was now definitely a truck. "9th, he said quietly, before nodding. He slammed his hand on the table as hard as he could, Daigoro even having to take a step back. All the past holders jumped, grumbling and yawning as they looked over at Yoichi. "Oh, for fuck's sake, Toshi," 7th mumbled loudly, her gaze just over Yoichi's shoulders. The little boy had somehow constructed a road for his truck on his mat, which seemed much bigger now. "That is the 9th, Yoichi said calmly, "and 6 is in control." Daigoro looked up at the screen, blinking in shock as the user climbed into bed beside a blonde boy. "We are so screwed," Bruce said, laughing slightly. No one argued, not even the small child causing chaos in the corner. Okay, so it was really fun to read through this one again because, this was the introduction of Izuku to them and I wanted it to be kind of funny. And I think I accomplished that just with his ever-growing mat for no reason. I will explain a little bit about how his powers work and why, it's all so confused. I do remember that I did explain that. And if it needs more explanation, I'll give it probably at the end here. I will say having 8 people in one scene at one time was super hard to write, super hard to keep track of. I'd be writing, and then realize, hey, where's Hikage? He's suddenly not here because he doesn't talk a lot as is, so it's really hard to fit him in. Or I just focus on Nana because she's one of my favorites and then completely sidetrack all of them. A brief rundown because I will call them by their numbers a lot. And whether or not you remember this is, I don't know. So the first is Yoichi. He was the first holder of One for All. The second, I believe, is Kudo. Let me double check. But I believe the second is Kudo. I get the second and third confused. Yeah, that's not helpful. We're going to say the second's Kudo. And the third is Bruce, who was, I don't know if you know, the lore of it all. The second freed Yoichi from his brother. Bruce was his second in command. So Bruce is the second. Hikage's the third, the one who went out to the woods to train. The fourth is Daigoro, which I'll explain how he got it because he kind of brings up a few times he didn't give his quirk willingly. That will be explained. That's Daigoro, and then comes N, who I put as having anger issues in this one because I believe he does. I do kind of go a little more into it than that, and then After N comes Nana, the only female, which I feel like is why I tend to gravitate towards her a little bit. Plus, she's also really cute, and I just love her story. And then you have Toshinori, who, does not have the best reputation among the Vestiges. And then you have Izuku. So, hopefully I explain how that all works. It will be really interesting for me to actually read it all the way through, because I haven't read it all the way through since I posted any of these. Yeah, that's it for this one. Thank you guys so much for listening.